Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Claire Jones. If we haven't already met, I am an author and speaker and mentor committed to changing the world for the better through inclusive stories and practices. And we are jumping on for my Visionaries in Transition Facebook Live series, where I interview the amazing and inspiring impact makers in my network to discuss the transitions that have shaped our lives and businesses, because there are so many, so many. All right, so if you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you are here. And today I'm talking to Katrina. And I think we originally met through the F-bomb. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah, the F-bomb community is tight.
Mhm.
And if you haven't heard of it before, it's the F-bomb Breakfast Club, and it's an amazing network community. If you haven't checked it out already, go look it up. So I'm so glad to have you here today. How are you doing? Catch me up on everything.
I'm doing pretty good. There's, I'm entering different new phase of my business. I recently hired an assistant for the first time. So that's very exciting, getting to rethink my business. This is something I talk to my own clients about a lot, that one of the best things you can do for your business is prepare to have an assistant.
Yeah.
Because it really forces you to clean things up, streamline, answer some questions that you do know the answers to, but you just didn't make yourself answer.
Mhm.
And so like that already helped. And then now that she's here and we're working together, it's just that even more, there's things. Yeah, I met with her this morning, and just more things that I'm like, oh, why aren't I doing it this way? Let's just change this over.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about what having her on board will bring. And it's kind of nice to have someone else in my business again. I don't mind being alone, but I found that I don't like working alone, which is part of the reason when I work with clients, I'm always a done with you person, never a done for you person, because I don't like I don't like cleaning up people's stuff by myself. I like
Working in a silo.
Yeah, I like working with people to help them with their stuff and their email and everything. But when I find myself by myself, I'm just like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this.
Oh, the life of entrepreneurship. Yeah, I mean, documentation is the fastest way to scaling, and it's kind of boring, and people kind of hate that process, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
And I found early on, because I knew that was a problem a lot of solopreneurs face, and I knew I wanted to kind of get on top of it. I did try to make sure I had some early documentation, and part of the reason I think it worked is that I allowed it to be kind of fun. In that I knew I was writing an instruction manual for just me at the time. So like literally the notes that I had for how to, register my business license include stuff like, the website is really slow and terrible, but this doesn't actually take very long.
Yeah.
And so it's just like little things like that kind of help future me. And so it means that every January, when it's time to do my city license and the annual report and my taxes, and it's actually pretty fast because it's all outlined.
Yeah. I love leaving notes to myself. Like, some of my comments on my documents are just like me yelling at myself.
Yeah.
Like, remember this. For goodness sakes. Well, that brings us to the first question that we start with, is like, tell us the backstory. How did you get to this place in hiring your first assistant and moving beyond the solopreneur lifestyle?
Yeah. So out of college, I had, sort of one kind of officey job that turned into another one. And that grew into a pretty substantial position. I ended up president of that company. And somewhere along the way, and I wish I could tell you where this came from, because I honestly don't know. I had this idea in my head of, what if I could help people like clean up and clear out their stuff, like declutter and organize. That seems like something I'd be good at. It seems like something I would like. I really wish I knew where that thought came from, but I think it just sort of slowly grew on its own. And I started with a friend of mine that, I'd been in her house, and she had been talking about her spare bedroom, and it just filled her with so much guilt. She referred to it as my shame. Like, that was the word she used. And so I asked her, I said, would you, for free, be my first client. So I can find out if I'm any good at this and if I actually like it and how it would work. And she said yes. And we cleaned up her spare bedroom. And then she referred me my first 2 paying clients from that. And then for several years, I just did it on the side. I had a full-time job that was all I needed financially. And over time, because I was at a real estate brokerage, and I've never been particularly interested in real estate, and I don't necessarily love talking about it. And so if I would meet strangers, just complete new people, and they ask, what do you do? I would just say, I'm a professional organizer, even though I was, doing it maybe once every 2 months, but that was something I wanted to talk about. And so then I started getting clients from that, just sort of introducing myself that way and saying, this is what I do. But still all just word of mouth and referrals from past clients, because I still had a regular 9-to-5 job. And then, and talk about major transitions is when I decided to leave that job in 2019 and go into business for myself. And so I did that in 2019, had a nice first year where it's like, we're slowly growing. Every year is better. Every month is a little bit better than the last. And I'm like, okay, this is working. And then the pandemic hit and it sort of stopped for a little bit and then kind of had to slowly build back up again. But I had been kind of down on myself about that because I really felt stuck, because it's like, I feel like I'm still, I started 2020 at 50% of the business I want to be doing. And I'm at the end of 2020 and I'm still 50% of the business I want to be doing. And I told that to some other guy I was having a networking meeting with. And he said, so your business didn't go down in 2020? And I was like, oh, well, when you put it that way, yeah, no, that was great. Because even though I had to shut down for a while, then some of the people that came after that were higher paying clients. And that started to be in a place where people were much more, I don't want to say desperate, but they needed this work done. They did, because no one was inviting me into their home in summer of 2020 if they didn't need me there. So that was, it was an interesting change in my client base. I used to service a lot more older clients. And then it suddenly became a lot of people with young kids, like families with young kids. And, kind of seeing that shift happen.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the pandemic, because I went through a very similar situation where I was doing straight up business consulting when we headed into the pandemic, and my business actually exploded because I was helping all of the other business owners grapple with the changes of COVID, like brick and mortar places and other service providers, and being like, all right, how do we adapt to these changes? So 2020 actually ended up being my best year ever. And so I'd run into these similar conversations of being like, oh, we just need to reorient ourselves to a different type of client base and be adaptable to that change that comes along. And I think that that's one of the things that you're circling around here with, is being open to adapting, which is instrumental in all businesses and entrepreneurship and all of that.
And it's been interesting seeing the change in myself as well over time. When I first started, the last thing I wanted to do was work with real estate agents, because that's who I'd been working with. A lot of the experience and know-how I have helping people sort through their email, helping small business owners with their calendars and their to-do list and everything, that all came from years of me teaching classes to real estate agents and working one-on-one with them. So I had a lot of experience in that area, but I was so sick of doing it. And so when I first started, I was like, no, I'm going to focus on the home clients. I can do digital decluttering, I can do business stuff, but but over time, it's, some of that burnout went away. And also starting to realize that part of what I'd gotten tired of was I was helping the agents at our specific brokerage. So they all had the same brand and the same company and generally the same tools. And I was basically telling them the same spiel every time. I was getting really good at it, but it was the only thing I was doing. And it was always the same. Whereas now, I actually do have real estate agent clients again, and I love working with them because it's not all the same. Like there's a lot I recognize because I definitely know a lot about how real estate agents work and where they struggle and what they need help with. But they're just, they're different offices, they're using different tools. I have a different relationship with them as far as what they want help with. And it's intermixed with, and then I go to a woman who homeschools her 4 kids and needs help setting up the classroom space. And then I go help someone with their garage because it got full of Christmas stuff after Christmas. And and then go to an insurance agency and help them figure out how they're going to make their goals for 2023 a reality because they've never been able to implement the way they wanted to. Like I'm doing all of these at the same time, and that variety is really nice for me. It's a struggle then whenever I work with any sort of like marketing person or try to do like worksheets, because they're always like, what's your target market? And I was like, I have several target markets and I know I should specialize, but I don't want to because I don't want to do the same thing all the time.
And that's a perfect formula for entrepreneurship and being a business owner, is like you get to choose whether you want to do breadth or depth, is like, do you want to become, I mean, this is what I ran into when I was getting my art history degree. My BA is in art history, and going into academia, the art historical world is very much focused on specialists. Like you have to become the world-renowned expert on Picasso's brushstroke from 1931 to 1933. And you have to get so minutely specific as to your expertise in that field that's what turned me away from it. I was like, look, I want to look at stuff all over the board. I want a variety of things. And I think that's a very large contributing factor to going into this type of lifestyle and having that freedom. That's a theme that we talk a lot about in this interview series, is freedom of variety, freedom of creative freedom, time freedom, financial freedom. All of those things are very big motivating factors for us.
And what's funny too, especially I see this a lot because of the nature of my work and how often I work with like the solo entrepreneur person. The way a lot of us go into this for the freedom, and then sometimes elements of that freedom become the trap. And I was actually, one of my clients I was talking to recently about this, where he was like, I love that, my work is such that, I could just sleep in on any given day and I could decide I'm going to go backpacking or whatever.
Totally.
And I'm like, yeah, but like leaning too far into that, is that actually making you happy? Is it making you happy that you're not going to bed at the same time every night? Is it making you happy that you never seem to be making any progress working on your business, only putting out client fires, and realizing that some amount of structure is really fulfilling.
Yeah.
And when you're in business for yourself, you have to generally create it and maintain it yourself, which is very hard to kind of be boss and employee, parent and child at the same time.
Totally.
And so that's oftentimes what I am helping people with, is being a little bit more of their boss brain.
Yeah.
Coming in and saying like, and also I think helping people admit that they also have an employee brain. There's that child brain that is not going to want to do stuff. And to look at it in terms of like, okay, so if we know that there's a difficult toddler in our brains that is going to come out every time we try to work on our marketing.
Yes.
What can we do about that? Other than just throw up our hands and give up? Like, is there any way we can set up that toddler for success? Like any way that we can convince that toddler to do what we eventually want to have happen? And also to be realistic about like, are we asking it to do things that are unreasonable? And maybe that we don't want. Like that sometimes I feel like a lot of times the conversation ends up, I'm hearing someone talk and eventually I'm like, do you want that? Like, do you actually want to do this? Or were you just told you should want to do this?
Yes.
It's the other people doing it and they're successful, theoretically, seemingly.
Anecdotally.
From the view you have of them, they seem very successful. But that I end up, I work with people a lot on that. I find is getting honest about what is reasonable to expect from yourself. What do you actually want and like? When I'm working with physical clutter. I end up having people, I'll oftentimes get rid of stuff that was in their house for a long time that they never actually liked.
Yeah.
It's your house. You don't have to have anything in here you don't like.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. I love that you brought that up, because one of my catchphrases that I've used over the years is that business development is personal development at the end of the day. Like they're one and the same, because you're going to expose your flaws, your imperfections, your self-sabotaging behaviors, because you are the boss and the employee and the admin and the accountant. You know, and if you are using weaponized incompetence as an employee self, you know, this cranky toddler in your brain of being like, well, I'm just bad at accounting, so I'm just never going to do it. That is just as self-sabotaging as being like, I'm so good at accounting that I'm just going to do only accounting.
Yep.
I'm just going to look at my numbers all day long, every single day. I'm just going to watch that bank account, and that bank account's going to do what the bank account's going to do. But we have to come to terms with ourselves. Like, that's one of the things that I've run into with my efficiency organization structures that I've been promoting over the years, is because people kind of balk at the restriction that they see from structures and organization. But like you mentioned, it's kind of a freedom operating device as well, because it frees you up for other things.
Well, and it's worth asking, you know, how free does it feel when you are having to decide everything every single time?
Totally.
When no part of your life happens automatically, when everything has to be a new decision, a new willpower, and like there is a lot of freedom in just saying, I get up at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Regardless of when my first meeting is.
Yeah.
I get up at 8 and I brush my teeth, and, you know, I do these like 2 things, and that is, you know, 8 less decisions that I'm having to do every single morning, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And it gives you the freedom to then spend the rest of your day making fun decisions and interesting decisions and meaningful ones.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, that's exactly why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every single day. Because he didn't want to waste his decision-making capacity on what to wear. He wanted to use his capacity for something more meaningful.
And I feel like so often people assume that less of their life can kind of be automatic than it is, especially because there are certain areas of our life where it can't be fully automatic or fully delegated. And so we just tell ourselves we can't do anything about it. But something like, I'd always, you know, especially with the real estate agents, this would kind of be a bit of a battle. Less so now. I think people are more on board. Talking about template emails. And they're like, well, I don't want it to seem generic. I want to seem personalized. It's like, well, you can personalize it.
Totally.
But what if you didn't start with a blank page every time you wrote an email? If you write the same email to every client explaining inspections, or the same email to every client talking about, you know, your policy on XYZ, like, why don't you start with the template and edit? It's easier to edit something that exists than write it from scratch and then edit it to make sure it sounds good.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it turns into Mad Libs at that point. It's like you're just clicking in the right information. I mean, that's how I do my emails, and I've gotten different responses to it over the years. Like, some people hate the templated approach, and I'm like, all right, then I'm just not going to email you anymore.
And it kind of lets you, there's a certain amount to which you can just sort of have people self-select
exactly
they're going to be in your life,
which is also automating the process.
Yeah, it's like if there's someone in your life that demands that every interaction with them is special and different and requires a lot of your time, and you don't want to have to do that, then they really need to be worth it to stay in your life at that point. And so if they're not, then they should go find someone who prefers to interact that way and build a relationship with them.
Totally.
And it's the same thing I would tell a lot of once again, real estate agents were the worst offenders on this, that sort of work-life balance of checking your email late at night or whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, you know, usually it was this idea, like, I need to be responsive, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that do you generally want to be checking your email at 9 o'clock at night? No. Are you checking it every night at 9? No. It's like, so why are you setting up an expectation with your clients that you're going to? If you're just going to
Yes.
break that promise in the future, like
Yes.
promise them something that you can stick to.
Yes.
Is email them during the hours when you know you are available to email, and not during the hours where you sometimes are because you feel like it.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that you can't work on your email at 9 o'clock at night if that's when you feel motivated sometimes.
Yeah.
It just means you don't hit send.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
schedule it.
yeah, you either schedule it or you just leave it in a draft, and the first thing in the morning is just send for everything you
Yeah.
drafted last night.
Yeah.
I used to joke with the people in my office, if ever you get an email from me at 8 a.m., I definitely wrote it the day before, because I am not in my email at 8 a.m., but
Yeah.
I'm willing to have people get emails from me at 8 a.m. because I can read their responses by 9.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this is a huge topic that I've seen, especially in the coaching industry in the last couple of years, because of the rise of tools like Voxer. I don't know if you've come across Voxer, but it's a voice memo app that a lot of coaches use to have that immediate response to the people in their programs. Like if one of their clients has a crisis at 9 p.m. on a Friday night, you know, they are available via Voxer at 9 p.m. on a Friday night to answer those clients' questions. And I'm like, are you really wanting to sign up for that kind of responsiveness though? Because there are going to be times where you don't see that message because you're out living your life.
Yeah. It's like, you want to sign up for that responsiveness and that responsibility. Because now you have clients that are assuming that you will be there for them at all times a day, as opposed to how much can you be there for them a lot, but focus on how are you going to set them up so that they can handle, you know, they can at least like put out the fire immediately.
Yes.
And then talk to you at your scheduled time for what to do next.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I mean, like, and this may be kind of a more gets into personal philosophy, but for anyone who's in kind of like the coaching and development stuff, which I definitely am, even though you don't necessarily think of a professional organizer as like someone in coaching, but it's very much coaching. It's sometimes practically therapy. But you know, you eventually want people, I guess not to say that you want them to not be your client, but you certainly don't want to be dealing with the same problem for years and years. Like I often tell people that like what I like happens with most of my clients is, especially like for house clients, they got a lot to work on the house. We have, you know, a couple appointments scheduled over the course of maybe 6 months. Like I come in once a month or something, and then I don't hear from them for 2 years. And then out of the blue, they email me because they're like, Katrina, my mother-in-law had to move in with us. So everything we set up that was working great no longer works because my life is different. My space is different. So that's, I tell people, it's like, that's what I want to have people come back to me as clients, but I want them to come back because they need new help, because things have changed in their life, or they're a different person with different needs. So I love when people come back to me and they're like, oh, this changed, you know, we had a baby, or I finally retired, or whatever, like we're doing this. You know, I had one client, she moved and she's like, so we set up my old bedroom and now I have a different bedroom, and it's way smaller. I don't have the same closet. Like, can we set up a new bedroom for me in the new space? That's kind of what I like, is I want people to be able to grow out of what we're working on.
Totally. And I think that brings us back to the beginning of this conversation of rote repetition too, of the same old thing time and time and time again. Is like, I think that is a profit model for a lot of service providers, of just providing the same thing time and 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 saying the same thing time and time and time and time and time.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly fine, you know, business model if you change people's oil. Like,
yeah,
you know, if you're selling them bagels, like it's the need doesn't change, and people still need to have it. But if you're working in sort of like development and growth, and the whole point is to be better than you were, you know, yesterday, this morning, then you don't want to see the same people for the same things.
Yeah. All right, so we've talked about transitions, we've talked about lessons learned. Now let's talk about what tools or practices that you've used to support yourself during these times of change.
so the thing that I learned years ago about myself that was most important is that the reason I'm good at systemization is because at heart I am a cheater.
Yes,
So
yes. I
whatever,
always say that. It's because I'm fucking lazy.
yeah, whatever I set up, I will find a way around it, which means I need to set up something new.
Yeah.
And then I can find my way around that. And as soon as I realized that that was not me failing to do the
Mhm.
system, it really changed my perspective on it. And now it changes how I teach others how to deal with this. It's like, no system is good forever. Most systems are not good when you first start them anyway. They need retooling.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad when it falls apart. Don't blame yourself and don't blame the system. It's just that it's no longer right. And so there have been times in my life where certain things worked. And then I slowly start to realize like, oh, that's not working anymore, is it? And I have to be willing to, rather than fight and try to push myself back into it because it was working. I liked when it was working. It's like, no, what if we just sort of blow this all up and try something else for a little while, and we'll see how that works until I cheat my way out of that too. And so realizing for myself that that it's better for me not to try to stay stuck in the way something used to work has helped quite a lot. And realizing that it's sort of like there's this advice that people give to writers, which I'm guessing that you have heard, that anyone who tells you there's something wrong with your book is right, and anyone tells you how to fix it is wrong.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that there are places in my business life that I need to apply that more to, which is and it actually happened in December at an F-bomb meeting. I was kind of in the hot seat and people were giving me advice, and I was resistant to it because the answers I was getting were not the right answers. They weren't what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
But the confidence of that group that I had a problem that I needed to solve and that I was approaching it from the wrong way was correct and spot on. And realizing that sometimes I'm going to need to parse out, what is this person saying to me and what is this person saying to me?
Yeah, totally.
So it's if I don't like the advice they're giving, why don't I like it? And what could I like about it? What could I do that would get the thing that they think their advice would give me? And looking for that solution rather than trying to find, try to make myself work into the advice I'm giving, which I know is not good for me, or to just disregard all advice because it doesn't seem like it's going to work.
Yeah. I tend to be one that's resistant to advice, just because I'm also nonconformist to the end. But I think that's a very important distinction of being all right, I'm not going to completely throw out the bathwater with the baby, when it comes to the advice that's given to me, but what within that advice can I adapt to what I see from my perspective.
And that is something that for me has been a bit of a through line since at very least college, because so I majored in drama and dance. And the thing about majoring in drama and dance is that you spend most of your time in college with people telling you how your body should be working. And they do not all tell you the same thing. And some of it is just it's just practice or sort of technique or something the way you see, most people doing push-ups in the gym is not the way you're going to see dancers doing push-ups, because dancers do yoga push-ups with their elbows right in here. You can't do push-ups that way. Or the way we'd warm up and they might have us roll down in acting class to kind of get our bodies warmed up is not how they're going to have me roll down in my dance class. And having to realize that it's just my job is to show up to class, and while I'm in this class and working on this class content, to just be all in and give it the best shot and try it, see what's there. And then when I go to my other class, just sort of forget all that and try over here. Totally. And then later on will be when I decide what I'm keeping. but in
Yes.
the moment, like just apply it as is, give it a shot, give it an honest shot, and then figure out what you can keep and what you should disregard.
Yeah, totally. I think that's one thing that we've been dancing around this entire conversation is the review process. Because we're talking about that in terms of systems and how we set that up for ourselves, but we're also talking about that in terms of like what advice we even accept into our worldview. And I think that that's a super important step that a lot of people forget is like the plan and the do people usually are fine with, but it's the review where people fall off.
And I find that a lot of times, you know, the early parts of my conversations with new clients, I'm asking them about what systems are in place or what systems have they tried. And then depending on what's been going, I'm either asking, so what works about that or what didn't work about that? And oftentimes this is the first time the clients really considered, why didn't that work?
Yeah.
And usually part of the problem is that they've sort of considered why it didn't work, but they didn't go the second level of why. And oftentimes it's only the second level that we need to get to. It's not even like 7 levels deep. It's just like, well, this didn't work because of this. And it's like, well, why was that a problem? Like well, because of this. It's like, oh, so we need to set up a system that, you know, is ready to adapt to that part of your life.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up? I mean, I want to continue this conversation, but we could talk for hours about this.
No, it's great getting a chance to chat. I was in preparation for today. I watched some of your old ones, so that was super fun, kind of seeing and including some people that I knew, you know, names that were familiar. So that was pretty cool to hear some other people's transition stories and what they got out of it.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started the series, I never really thought about what it would look like when we got to episode 31. I'm like, would we be talking about the same things over and over and over and over and over again? But having different people's perspectives and different lifestyles and experiences is just, it brings a whole new depth to these conversations that I've just been eating up. I love it.
And you know what's funny is that in preparing for this conversation, it just got me thinking about different transitions in my past. Like we didn't even touch on some of them, but just kind of thinking about like the one that really got me was I started to realize when I left my job at the real estate brokerage to start my own business, there were so many reasons why I did that. All of them are true and all of them could stand alone as the reason. And I kind of noticed that because when people would ask, depending on who they were and how like into it I wanted to get, I would just kind of pick one of those reasons and say it. And it was always enough because it was like, oh yeah, that's a reason to you know, leave a job and start your own business. Totally. I get that. Yeah. And that idea that like all of these things were true. They could all stand on their own. And this feeling like whenever I told someone one, I was telling the truth, but also felt like I was telling a lie because I didn't talk about the 8 other things.
Totally. Yeah.
But it also makes sense as to why, you know, of all of the like, you know, big decisions in my life, there's plenty of big decisions I don't regret, but like that one, not for a second, you know, is like, as soon as it happened, it's like, this is the right choice. And never have I been like, oh, maybe I should have stayed around. Maybe I shouldn't have done this or whatever. Yeah. And it's probably it's got the fuel of all of those different reasons that are all self-supporting behind it.
I definitely know what you're talking about. Like each decision I make, there's like 10 micro decisions behind it that no one really sees, but they see the big decisions and they're like, how did you get to this place? And I'm like, well, there's steps A through Z behind it. That led me to this point. If you want, you know, my hour-long masterclass on why I decided to do this. All right. Well, as always, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about today. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own insights and stories and experiences with us as well. We'd love to know how transitions like these have shaped you in your own lives and businesses. So special thanks to Katrina for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It was so wonderful talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. So please comment, like, subscribe below. Check out Linktree/clairjoyance for all of my links. And then Katrina, where can people find you?
KatrinaConsults.com is probably the best place. And if you want to talk more about my business, you can book a free 15-minute call there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll make sure those links are in the description and the comments for easy access. But until next time, please remember that your authentic self is extraordinary. It is wonderful, and you owe it to yourself to create the elevated life that you know you are capable of. Take care, everyone.